Good day and welcome to the Frontline Chatter podcast. I am your host, Jarian Gibson, and I am back with Patrick Coble today as a co-host. How you doing today, Patrick?
Doing good. It's like nice and sunny. It's teasing us that it's not really fall, but I think the 30 degrees are coming in a couple days.
Yeah, same here. Looks like weather is coming through cold again. They said this weekend and Monday is going to be the coldest. I like
Mm.
how our guest is smiling though. So we have Kevin Bacon on, and he is based out of Florida, and he's like, I don't know if you guys are talking about that cold weather. So welcome, Kevin. Kevin works at Nutanix. Go ahead and yourself, Kevin.
Hey, Jarian. Yes, Kevin Bacon. I live down in Fort Lauderdale, and yes, this is the time where everyone else gets the bad weather and we get the good weather. So that's
Yeah, you don't know what this 30 degrees we're speaking of is. You don't have to worry about that. 30 degrees Celsius, yes.
yes. It's been nice, and so far, fingers crossed, no hurricanes this year either. So we've gotten double lucky this year. Yeah, happy to be here on the podcast with you guys. And I'm from Nutanix. I've been Nutanix. This will actually be November of this year is actually my 10th year.
Wow,
10 years at Nutanix.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thank you.
It must be a good place to be if you've been there for 10 years.
It's been a ride for sure.
Yep.
And then before that I was with Citrix for 8 years. So I've been on the vendor side of the community, for 18 years. So yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, and thank you to Nutanix. They've been a founder partner of ours since we've started the World of EUC. They also were a sponsor at this year's Amplify. So thank you, Nutanix, for all the support and supporting the community, and always happy to have a chat. So let's go ahead and kind of dive in. So you gave a really good presentation at Amplify during the sponsor session for Nutanix. Which gave a good overview, kind of got people thinking that may not know about Nutanix. But for our listeners who may not know as well, do you kind of want to give them, kind of the quick overview of Nutanix and what they do?
Sure. I mean, Nutanix has really always been about modernizing infrastructure. And that started in the data center with, getting rid of the SAN, combining storage and the servers together. Simplifying that, we moved into the hypervisor and combined that, and then we've just continued to pour more and more into this modern infrastructure. So we can do networking, we have all the security, we can do volumes, objects, any kind of files that you have, and then recently we've been also managing this both in a data center context with servers and physical goods, or public cloud hyperscalers. So being able to deploy there. And so really we have this completely modernized infrastructure that can be leveraged across both the data center footprint, colos, service provider clouds, as well as the hyperscalers.
Yeah, so I mean, since you worked at Citrix, can you tell us a little bit about some of your top features when it comes to EUC deployment? So it sounds like you've been in the EUC bubble for a long time. And what are some of those features that people go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I first found out about Nutanix when I was working at Citrix, and we'd always be sharing about what new things we're seeing. And Nutanix for me caught my eye because it just made a lot of the infrastructure that you'd have to deploy Citrix on. It made it a lot easier, right? Because a lot of times the projects would get stalled because the SAN that the Citrix was running on was having some IOPS issues or just inconsistencies throughout the day, and you'd see that reflected in the poor user experience. And then I just saw, especially from a consulting and professional services, there was so much work to figure out like legacy infrastructure in terms of what the scalability is going to look like, in terms of how many servers, how much storage we're going to need, and exactly how many users we would need. And sure, I mean, if you told me, okay, for the next few years, we're going to have this, X number of thousands of users, they're going to have this profile, they're going to have these applications. I was pretty good about building out, architecting a great pod, architecture, and designing out all of that. But what I would find out is you'd go back a year later to the same customer. Oh, well, the number of users changed, the application has changed, the workflows changed, the infrastructure changed. And you're like, oh, okay, well, now you've got to basically redo this whole project that we did a year ago because all of those assumptions no longer apply. And a lot of that legacy infrastructure, it has to be deployed in certain kind of rigid quantities because of the siloed nature of that technology. So when I saw Nutanix, it was more about, hey, you can deploy this in bite-sized increments.
Yep.
It's a lot more flexible in terms of you can combine different quantities of compute and storage. And 10 years ago it was a certain amount of SSD and spinning disk, and now it's all NVMe. But really being able to consolidate that. What I always like to see too, from just from kind of the geeky Citrix side of it, is the Citrix teams that are able to really just take on the whole infrastructure.
Uh-huh.
A lot of that's not the norm, but by any means. But that's what the technology enables, is that you don't have to wear a hypervisor hat and a storage hat and a networking hat. Most people that can manage a Citrix environment could manage the Nutanix environment, part-time. And I think that's really powerful as a way to really isolate and simplify what you're doing for EUC, so that it's not affecting the rest of the infrastructure, and so that what's going on in the politics and the complexities of the rest of your infrastructure is not affecting your end user, day-to-day performance. And so those are the kind of things that drew me to it, and that I still get to geek out with the technology.
Yeah, and I know for me, like on the front end of any Nutanix, when y'all started releasing your Sizer product and being able to easily like dial things in and be like, oh, this is for G5 nodes, G6 nodes, G7 nodes, that made it real easy. And then obviously the Prism dashboards are just like out of this world compared to a lot of others. It's just simple, clean, to the point. Things are highlighted you need to pay attention to. Alerts make sense. So to your point of like EUC nerds running the hypervisor, no problemo, right? Because you all have made it so easy and have really focused on making like a clean GUI, lots of reports and great alerts. And that's what you need in a hypervisor and EUC deployment. You need to know things are going good or not going good. I think y'all have really knocked it out of the park on that.
Yeah, let me just add too. Making it easy for the customer is what got me into it. But then being a part of Nutanix, what made me realize is it also enables our support organization to better support your customers. So when there are issues, this is software we're talking about, right? There's always going to be challenges, bugs, issues, things that we can improve on. So, but because we have that control of the whole stack, we're able to really understand where all the issues are. When things come up, it's just amazing to see how our support teams with engineering and professional service and everybody else is able to solve any customer problem that comes with us. I mean, it's night and day from what I saw at Citrix and other companies, where it's just, when you have a vendor that owns this small part of your stack, it's really hard for them to provide that excellent support for you, because there's so much that's really out of their control. And so a lot of times the support becomes, it's not us, right?
Yeah.
It becomes
pointing.
Exactly. So that's, I think, really where the customer delight, over the 10 years has been seeing customers when they do run into challenges, that we're able to support them in such a way that they've never, oftentimes the first time they open a support case and they go through that, they're just blown away. They're just like, I've never seen and I feel like so many support organizations are so, ineffective, that a lot of geeks and practitioners are just like, that's sort of like your last line of like, I will run to the end of the 100th Google tab before I will call support. Like, that is like you're just expecting that to be the worst possible experience, where a lot of times we have to tell our new customers, like, give us a call. We can actually support you. And I think that's just really, really special that with Nutanix.
At Nutanix.next, your yearly annual conference, you had some big announcements around Citrix and Omnissa. Can you tell us about those and what excitement you're seeing from customers? Also, what are you seeing from others in the EUC space that can work with Nutanix?
Yeah, this year at .next is our Nutanix premier customer event. It had much more of an EUC experience this year. We had a whole EUC section of our of the exhibit hall. We call it like the EUC wing. I think we had 12 or 13 vendors there, so it was a whole experience just for that. And I think the first keynote actually had two major announcements around EUC. The first was that Omnissa is now an official partner. Omnissa is the company that spun out of Broadcom and with the Horizon and Workspace ONE products. So the big announcement there was that Horizon was going to run on AHV, which is going to be the first hypervisor outside of vSphere, which Horizon was built kind of together with because it was part of the same company. So they're working. So now we're already in, and then yeah, so that was the first announcement. The second announcement was with Citrix, really, where Citrix was now actually taking on the responsibility for having direct HV integration. So in the past, we had this plugin. You had to make sure the plugin was installed on your cloud connectors or your controllers, and it would have to be updated from time to time. And it was just sort of like an extra step there. And it also only supported our legacy Prism APIs. So really, we're knocking out a bunch of things at the same time. So Citrix is taking it over, and it announced, the GA for it with Prism Central and Citrix Cloud. Then the other big piece of that is that it supports multi clusters. So now you don't have to have one connection for each cluster. So you can just connect to Prism Central and manage all your clusters as that from that Prism Central. So that enables multi cluster management. And then it also enables our template management, which is now part of Prism Central. We've had that for a while, but now Citrix is actually leveraging that. So that allows you to do version control. That allows you to do automatic cluster placement, so that whenever you define a template, will automatically make that available. You don't have to, copy your base images from cluster to cluster, and then every time you update them, have to redo that. So we're taking on a lot of those steps, and then Citrix is just plugging right into that without a plugin. So that was the big announcement from the Citrix side. And then we had, like I said, a lot of sponsors there who were also announcing, Prism Central support and greater integration with AHV. And we have so many options now. I mean, I think 11 or 12 different brokers now that work with Nutanix and especially with AHV. So there's just never been more choice in the system there, and really powerful options that can ride on Nutanix as a full stack. So from storage, hypervisor, compute, security, networking, files, everything. So it's been a big shift the last 6 months in how Nutanix is really embracing the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it does seem that, it doesn't seem, but we know everything's moving towards Prism Central integration. Traditionally, mostly everyone has been at the cluster level with Prism Element, and it seems like Omnissa is gonna be there once they go GA. Limited availability now. Citrix is already there for DAS with CVAD coming soon. I believe WorkSpot is already there with Prism Central, and then Chasm is the newest one for Prism Central. But it seems like more and more solutions that Nutanix supports, they're looking at making that jump to Prism Central for things like templates and multi-cluster management and all the good things to help reduce friction, customer delight when it comes to managing those EUC environments.
Yep.
Yeah, RBAC too. That's what a lot of our enterprises ask for. So better delegated administration as well. Lots of good things there.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, and as we're talking like RBAC and going into some of those new features, hybrid cloud is definitely the way people are moving into, where they've got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, doing the hokey pokey with the cloud there. So what have y'all seen when it comes to adoption? Because I know NC2 is, as it relates to EUC, to help make it easier for people that are actually running Nutanix and in a hybrid deployment.
Yes, I mean, since we started doing Nutanix Cloud, which is basically running the same Nutanix software stack, but in a hyperscaler in bare metal. So having that flexibility there, and everything's on demand, right? So it's not a managed service. It uses your cloud accounts, your tenants, your networks, everything. So right when we started doing this, I was like, oh, this is a natural fit for anything EUC related, because you always want to have a DR option that you just have, and you need to make sure your data is available there and your profiles are backed up. But then there's also those seasonal workloads, right? So you sign a 3-month contract to build a new app. right? Well, you need 100 people to have a desktop for 3 months. So it doesn't make sense to buy laptops for all of them, ship them around the world. It makes a ton of sense to spin up a couple nodes in Azure, run the same Nutanix stack that you run in the data center, and in less than a day, you're off to the races, and then in 3 months you can just shut it all down. So there's so many use cases like that, flexibility. And the other part that took me a while to kind of wrap my head around, but having the option to do Nutanix in public cloud actually makes Nutanix in private cloud more efficient. And that one takes a while to kind of wrap your head around. But the way that works is if all you have is data center, you have to plan a lot further ahead, right? Because you don't know what those new users, what those new workloads, what those new applications coming down the line are going to be. And you've got to plan in 3 to 5 year hardware purchase cycle. So a lot of customers are just used to overbuying, right? I mean, they run at 30 to 40% utilization because they want to they don't want to be there where, hey, they need it and they don't have it and they have to wait months. So, but once you get to this mindset of I'm doing data center and cloud, it's I can run my data center at 60, 70% efficiency, almost, probably double what the average is, because if I do have another workload, that's no problem. I can spin that up in an hour in your cloud of choice, in your resource location of choice, and it's the same exact experience. And your users, and as far as like whoever's consuming the VMs, right, the EUC team in this example, it's the same exact thing. It just looks like another data center that just popped up or another cluster that just popped up. So that's really powerful because now and then once I actually see how much servers I'm running in public cloud, I can go, okay, well, if this is going to be the same for the next 5 years, then let's go ahead and buy these servers or whatever we need. And then I can just pull that back as whenever the servers get racked and stacked. And if that takes 2 months, it's not a big deal. I can wait for that to happen. The workloads can be pulled back, no downtime. And that's to me how I think the future of a modern data center is going to work, where you have these outlets of the public cloud for these really short term or type needs. But if you're talking about long term workloads, it just doesn't make sense to be renting that. I mean, I think it's the old story of renting or buying a house, right? If you're going to be there for 5 years, you probably don't want to rent. If you don't know where you're going to be next year, then you probably don't want to buy, right? So that I think is being able to leverage both at the same time is really powerful. So yeah, that's really where we are with NC2. And then it's yeah, like as far as the customer uptake, that's been tremendous. I mean, our biggest Nutanix cloud customer is running Citrix, right? They're I think over 1,000 nodes the last time I checked. So it's incredibly scalable. And it just makes so much sense for any VDI deployment that you would want to have both.
And then as far as like with hyperscalers and licensing, can you tell us about that a little bit too as well?
Yeah, I mean, Azure, Microsoft has a lot of rules around licensing and hyperscalers. So, and so of course we have to follow along with that. And it gets into a lot of legal and terms and conditions and things like that. But a lot of times what we see is customers would like to have multi-cloud. They want to have Amazon Web Services and Azure, or Azure and GCP, or whatever it is. And oftentimes, private cloud as well. So really that hybrid and multi-cloud. Um, it just becomes a little difficult with some of the Microsoft restrictions around Windows and Office and things like that. So if you're planning this out, just make sure you consult with those Microsoft experts and understand what the licensing is going to be. For that reason, a lot of the VDI deployments that are hybrid cloud end up being, data center or colo plus Azure. I think is the easiest way forward and the most cost effective with the way the rules are now.
Yeah, it seems dedicated hardware or dedicated nodes help with the OS side for desktop, but Office is still always the fun game to play there.
hmm
And then adding more onto license, what about Nutanix licensing? Is that portable? I'm not locked into any hyperscaler or private cloud. I can just go anywhere.
Yeah, so Nutanix has had this really simple licensing scheme for quite a while now. So there's two things on it. First is um, all the licenses are portable. So the license you can have, different brands of hardware in the data center. You can have different clouds. You can have data center plus cloud. Like I said, it's just how many of that thing do you need, and then you need that many licenses. And if it moves, if you buy a 3-year term and then you want to start with one and then move to the other, that's fine. You just reallocate the licenses to a different cloud, or to on-prem or whatever it is. So that's really flexible. And again, we're not managing the cloud as a managed service, so that's a big difference from some of the other services that are out there, where it's a separate purchase from a separate vendor oftentimes than you might buy in a data set. It's just all the same licenses. You can buy from whoever. The other thing is, on the EUC side, we've had this special VDI license, VDI or EUC license, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's a per concurrent user license. So it allows you to license all of our infrastructure, including NCI, NCM, and files. You can license that all based on how many concurrent users you're going to run on that system. Now, the whole cluster has to be dedicated to EUC. It can't be like a very small EUC workload. So the whole cluster has to be dedicated to it. And if you want to run that on data center and cloud, we require our Ultimate Edition because it's such an incredible value. We put that in our EUC Ultimate. But that's really powerful, and that can be used with any broker. That can be used with just Microsoft RDP if you want. That can be used with Citrix, Omnissa, any of the other ones that we support, Digen and HP and everybody else, Teradici. So WorkSpot, there's a whole long list. And
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that you're done?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was going to go to the next question. I thought you were done. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll fix that. So speaking of different workloads, and you mentioned future workloads, GPU and API, or AI, not API, AI, along with being able to do workload switching from EUC to AI. What are your thoughts on this? And also, how can Nutanix help with this use case? Thoughts on AI and EUC?
Yeah, I feel like we're a little bit back to the future here because a few years ago we were talking about, VDI by day, machine learning by night, that kind of thing. And then NVIDIA kind of realized they needed a different chipsets for different purposes. So then they started taking out the graphics chips from the AI chips, and really kind of, and then some of the lower end graphics chips couldn't really do some of the AI processing that you needed. So it seemed like NVIDIA kind of took that fork in the road and said, well, you either got to buy an AI chip or a graphics chip. So it just didn't seem like that was a thing anymore, I guess. And back then the AI demand really wasn't there as much as you see, as obviously now it's incredibly different. So I think the big unlock right now is Jensen is saying for the enterprise, he has these new RTX 6000 Pro Blackwell. It's quite a mouthful. And I think there's also a 4500 that's a little bit lower tier that's going to be coming out in a few months as well. So we've already certified that on AHV. We already have that running, and Jensen's saying there's going to be enough volume, like the supply chain is ready for enterprises to be able to. There's going to be you can buy these, right, where some of the higher end chips are just very hard to get. So you can buy them. They're gonna be great cards for both graphics and AI workloads. And I was talking to some of NVIDIA's product teams, and they've got a lot of plans for more. I don't know what the status of this is, but he was saying they're hoping to see what they can do around promotional bundles and pricing to make this more approachable for larger audiences. Whereas in the past, it just seemed like the way NVIDIA was pricing some of the GPUs, they were really going after those high-end sort of 3D designers, right? And
making movies instead of PowerPoints, right?
Right. If you're making a movie or designing a complete car in CAD or something crazy like that, which I'm sure there's great use cases for. But 99% of my customers are not doing that, but they want their videos to look cleaner. They want the user experience to be snappier, things like that, where that became a little bit more challenging. And now I can see too, if you can get the value both from, I can have one cluster and I can do both inferencing, AI type stuff, and have better graphics in my VDI, and I can use it for both. I just feel like there's the economics, I think, are turning around a little bit. And just the expectations of some of the applications and stuff. I mean, I was just working with um, a company that resells cars, and they were showing me some of these newer applications where there's basically a whole virtual showroom. So you design a car, and then the system can 3D render your car that you just created, and even generate like a whole YouTube hype video for that car. So just the applications, I think, are going to keep going in that AI 3D rendered type direction. So, the our systems, are especially our VDI systems, have to be able to keep up with those demands.
Yeah, and I mean, and when it comes to some of the demands that people have, it's like usability is obviously a huge thing, and making sure unified communications and Office and all those things work. But then on the admin side and the business side, it's always probably top of mind is security, and making sure that the solution is secure. And so, how is Nutanix kind of helping people in our EUC world, especially when it comes to data and networking, to help secure their VDI workload more than the average bear?
Yeah, I mean, since the beginning of virtualizing a Windows session, and probably before that, it's always been paramount, the security aspect of it. And you see most of the largest, biggest embrace of the technology are regulated industries, right? Your government, your healthcare, your finance, because of the inherent security advantages of having a system where the data never leaves your servers, right? So you never have data sitting on a laptop or sitting on a PC. It's, that can walk off, walk outside your manufacturing plant, be at home with a user, which is, of course, more common these days. So I think that's paramount, right? Is that this is an inherently more secure technology. I mean, I was just talking to some of the security people at the Gartner conference, and they were, I always assumed like BitLocker was pretty good, and they laughed like, BitLocker can be broken like really fast. So I was like, well, there goes the whole like encryption angle, right? So I mean, it's inherently going to be more secure if your data never leaves your building, right? So I think that's the big part of it. Nutanix is really enabling a lot more advanced security capabilities. So protecting against ransomware for your user data, having snapshots that are immutable, right? Snapshots that you either cannot delete or need multiple admins to approve the deletion of, which makes it very difficult for like one compromised admin account to be able to just wipe out all your snapshots and backups.
Yep.
So things like that. And then on the networking side, being able to embed simple logic into the virtual networking stack, so we can make it very difficult for attacks that spread laterally in your organization to be able to do that. Because like the simplest thing that I like the best is just we can make it so that all of your virtual desktops sitting in the same subnet, even sitting possibly on the same server, can't actually see each other. There's really not much reason for virtual desktops to be able to see other virtual desktops. So we can just, it's literally a couple check boxes in Prism Central, and we can turn that on, which is just a simple thing to do to make it much more difficult for those, horizontal type attacks to promulgate in your infrastructure.
And then kind of switching gears, change is inevitable, right? Changes always happen. So with all the changes in the EUC space, have you seen this impact the market and adoption of Nutanix? Who are you seeing as the biggest migration use cases? And then why are customers switching?
Yeah, I mean, you've had a lot of acquisitions of a lot of vendors in this space, right? So, and that's brought about big changes in terms of the way those companies go to market, how they package, how they price, how they support their customers, how they, even just the way they assign account teams, and who you're going to talk to when you want to talk to the vendor, right? So all of those things together, I think, have just brought about this reckoning of, you know, what do we really want out of this technology? What do we want out of our vendors? What are our expectations? And really just get it's a lot of times when you make a technology decision and then you just go, okay, we're going to live with that, right? And then you figure out the next thing. You can't spend every quarter, every year reevaluating every decision you ever made as a company, right? So most companies just are on that autopilot. And I think this last 12 months has really forced every IT shop to question, you know, almost every piece of their infrastructure, right? Is this the right hypervisor for us? Is this the right compute vendor? Is this the right cloud? Is this the right broker? Is this the right storage? And so I just feel like there's this big awakening of, you know, do I have the right partners for my company? Are my vendors, the ones that are still best for me? Maybe they were the right vendors 5 years ago, 10 years ago when you made that decision, sometimes 20, 25 years ago. Um, you know, but vendors change, your company changes. Does it still make sense for me now? And we're finding a lot of times customers are saying, we don't think so, but at the same time, they haven't done that due diligence. So they're all trying to figure out what are the other vendors in the space? What do they offer? How can they help me? And I feel like that's what most of our conversations have been about this year is how can you help my business? How can you help me with my workloads? How can you help me, embrace hybrid cloud in a better way? And how can we simplify the way we support the business, the way we run our technology? So I think that's been, and a lot of these are not comfortable, conversations. A lot of times it's easier just to stick with what you have. So a lot of times it's we have to show a lot of empathy and really be better listeners as a vendor and really just understand what everyone's going through at this time. And I'd like to think that we're doing a better job at that and using that empathy to ultimately drive better value.
Yeah, and I mean, and then to that, because a lot of things are use case specific, which is what drives people's adoption and everything like that. And so, what are some of those top use cases that drive there, and any other customer success stories? You mentioned earlier that you've got a customer with like 1,000 nodes doing Citrix stuff, and I'm sure there's lots of other ones. But what's some of those big use cases like that you're actively in, along with some of those success stories?
The biggest movement right now, like very recently, is customers that want to stay on Horizon. There might be Workspace ONE customers, they've been Horizon customers, but they want that option to sever the Broadcom relationship.
Yep.
And I had I had one customer, they sent 5 people to our .next, and their whole mission was to figure out what was going to be their Horizon alternative. They wanted to see like all the other brokers that we work with, Nutanix and so forth. And literally the first 15 minutes of our opening keynote, we announced the support for Horizon on HP, and they were just like, I guess we could have gone home like basically, and after that, so like that pretty much we solved their whole like problem in the first 30 minutes of the conference. So I don't think I'd ever heard of a like conference attendance story that was solved that fast. And so that was kind of cool. And so that's what a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is talking to the customers that are trying to understand where we are with Horizon. And so, and we're making really good progress. Omnissa is saying they're expecting to go full GA next month. So that's just from announcing the partnership in May. I don't think I've seen any partnership that we've had that's made that much progress in that little bit of time. And there's just so much. There's just like all this kind of pent up demand for that. We have a lot of customers that have really gone all in on Nutanix as far as AHV and the platform, but their Horizon cluster is like the one cluster that's still running, the other hypervisor, right? So there's just a lot of those customers that are like, yeah, we're really happy to just completely finish that partnership with that other vendor, right? So that's been a big one, and I think that's going to be the biggest story of the next 6 months. Is as that goes GA and that goes. On the other side with Citrix, we've seen a lot of customers that are trying to figure out what their next step is and making sure that Citrix is the right partner for them. I feel like we've made good progress though in saying, the other thing with that is Broadcom used to have, or VMware, I should say, used to have a per seat license for the hypervisor. And so most of the Citrix customers that were running VMware had that license made the most sense in the past. So Broadcom's gotten rid of that. So you can only license per core.
Yep.
So, like even if Broadcom doesn't change any of the pricing, just changing the user license to a core license could be 2-3x. Just that one little change. So I think the Citrix customers, it's more about the VMware piece and now Broadcom piece and figuring out what does that look like. I think a lot of customers are trying to figure out how to make Azure work, right? Like I feel like everyone really, really, really wants to make Azure work. I find a lot that it maybe for some use cases, some simple use cases, but even trying to make Azure work, it's like you need all this extra stuff, right? First of all, they've got AVD, then they got Windows 365. Well, they don't really work together, right? So are you going to have 50/50, 25/75? Are you going to need to keep Citrix on-prem for certain use cases? Do you have to then go to Azure Local, which is a whole other new infrastructure stack to make your broker work? It just adds all these things to it. And then, most customers are going to need like a third party, like a Nerdio or something else like that on top of it, maybe different monitoring software. So it's like, I feel like a lot of customers are like hoping that's the easy button. And then they're trying to press the easy button and then finding out that it's maybe not as easy as they were hoping for. But I think we're also going to see, I'm hoping to see Microsoft open that up. It's where it's not so everything has to be Azure, but you can still have an Azure Virtual Desktop. So, and Windows 365 as well. I think that's going to be the area to look at the most. And we've got the Ignite conference coming up next I think this month or a couple weeks. Yeah, a couple weeks. So Nutanix is going to have a big presence there, and I think that's going to be the big space to watch. I think for me, the question I've asked for 10 years is, when is Microsoft going to take this EUC community really seriously and really commit to it? And we've seen them kind of like fits and starts, like try something and kind of pull back, and then try something different, and then kind of pull back. So it'll be really interesting, I think, to see is how serious is Microsoft take this community and this technology, and how far do they want to push it?
So, speaking of events and the community and so forth, you were just recently at EUC World Amplify. You were on our keynote. So how was your experience with the keynote? And then also, what are your thoughts on Amplify and the Nutanix experience there?
Yeah, it was a great event. I mean, I really liked it. It's one thing I think about these kind of events, and I just went to a Gartner event as well, and I really like being at those events that are more neutral, like they're not sponsored by a specific vendor, right? Because I just feel like the conversations, you don't feel like you have to be like honoring the sort of, it's like being at someone's house. You don't want to you don't want to say anything bad about the person who drive their house, right? So these neutral conferences, it feels just like there's a lot more independent consultants and people that, people in the community that don't necessarily have a allegiance to a certain vendor or technology. So it does feel like you get these much more honest conversations, and you have to kind of get down to the brass tacks. You have to be more real about what the solution can and cannot do. And I just feel like all those conversations are really powerful. And I really liked being on stage there we had NVIDIA, Omnissa, Citrix, Nutanix.
That was the dream team. It was awesome.
It was really an honor to be on a stage like that with everyone there. And it meant a great deal to me. But for me, like the conversations, both in the breakout sessions, over meals, back at the hotel, really make the event special. And I just think we just need to do more of these, and different locations, and just keep doing what you guys are doing. I think it's great. And then I really like the what World of EUC has done around Slack, right? And having an online community that's real time, right? I think that's where just everybody's kind of moved into DMs, like group DMs, right? So everyone's kind of socials kind of feels like a dinosaur these days. I mean, I think I just I don't even want to be on social anymore. Every time I turn it on, it's just like, ugh, I don't even want to be there. So I think like having just regular, group conversations and having those kind of Slack channels where you can talk about different topics with actual people and not think there's either interacting with a bunch of bots spitting out, AI garbage. Just I think is the right space that where people want to be right now. Um, and I just think that this community is doing a great job with both of those things.
And speaking of community and things, us keeping things going, next year Amplify will be in Milwaukee next year. So
Nice.
we're going back to the fall October timeframe. We're going to be in Milwaukee. We're also doing virtual as well. So hope to see you and the rest of the Nutanix team there as well as we go into year 3 of the new and improved World of EUC.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure I'll be there.
Yeah. So, with some of the changes and things going on and the events that are coming, are there any changes in that EUC community that some have changed and gone away and others are started? What's kind of been your thought of just the community as a whole, as it's definitely changed a lot as we've talked about events, but just in general, but with conferences and attendance and getting, the EUC bands back together?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like right. We went through COVID. We went through Citrix really pulling away from kind of the big synergy anchor conference in the space. So I think there was a little void there. But one thing that I've been seeing is this year. I mean, I went to IGEL's conference in Miami. Then Omnissa had a couple of conferences around the world. I think Vegas and I think somewhere in Europe. I went to the one in Vegas, and then and then Amplify over the summer, World of EUC. So between those 3 events, I mean, it was, I mean, you got Miami, Midwest, and you got the West Coast and Vegas. So I think you had an opportunity to go to a conference like that if you wanted to, and
Yep.
and if and you had a different vibe, right? From IGEL to Omnissa to World of UC. So I think now you have a steady slate of conferences, both vendor and neutral, different locations, different vibes. Um, so I feel like that's in a much better space now than it was like coming out of COVID like 2 or 3 years ago, where it just felt like there was not much for anybody. Um, I think, in of course, World of UC's kind of taken on that, those local community chapters and things like that. One thing we were talking about at Amplify was, aligning those with like Nutanix has our user groups, right? And World of UC has those UC communities, like being able to do like joint ones, right? So being able to get those 2 groups together, so that there can be that like kind of merging of the different groups, right? Where and so they can learn from each other and also build those local communities better. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for there. Like I said, I think the having the forums like Slack, like in real time, and being able to get your questions answered, and having vendors and community practitioners, independent consultants, IT engineers and architects, having everybody in those kind of forums is really neat.
And then, you mentioned the Nutanix community. So kind of tell us about the Nutanix community.
I know the Nutanix user group is what I've heard is the most popular. So that's our local community events.
Yeehaw. Yeah. So then after that, when we talk about just the community, what's next? What's y'all's next upcoming events? Because .next is done. So what is the next cool thing, or webinar or something that I know that people may want to be tuned into or get to?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're at the big hyperscalers are coming up. I think there's Ignite coming up, and then I think the reInvent is either the same week or a week after that. So those are the 2 big ones I think coming up very soon. That Nutanix is going to have a big presence at. I feel like we just wrapped up a lot of conferences. Like I said, I think I was at 4 in the last few months, and that was just me. I'm sure we were at more as well. But honestly, that next is not that far away. It's in May in
It's actually
Chicago.
April.
Is it
Yeah.
April?
Yeah, it's earlier next
Oh,
year.
April. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's about to say like we're already ramping up a lot for .next, and so that's really not that far away to start planning for. I mean, we're already in November here, so
Yeah. Get your
I
ticket.
think yeah. I mean, get those early bird tickets for sure.
Yep.
As we close things down, any closing thoughts or remarks, Kevin, today?
No, thanks for having me on, and thanks for continuing to you know offer all these resources for the community. I think it's just we had a lot of these conversations that amplify about how do we reach out better as a community? How do we um, you know you know reach into younger people and show them what this technology is all about, and get that younger blood, younger energy into this space, help educate people about the space. um, I think all those things are really helpful and good, and um, I'm really happy that you guys are doing this, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we thank y'all.
Yes, thank you, Nutanix, for continuing to support the community. Patrick, any closing remarks from you?
No, no. I mean, for me, I know with all the things going on in people's data centers and in the cloud and the licensing knobs that are being changed, I'm excited to see what awesome things Nutanix is going to keep doing and innovating. And I just can't wait for the next year or two, because I think the dust will start settling. And to your point, I think Microsoft may lit up on where you can run some of these things to give their customers kind of that flexibility that they've had in the past. And I know Nutanix is going to be there to do those things.
Yeah, and for people wanting to know more, we'll post some information when the blog post comes out and when this goes live. Things like the Nutanix EUC landing page, the Nutanix test drive, where you can kind of click through some of the Nutanix stuff in a browser without having to have to run anything. Also, the Nutanix community as well. So thank you again, Nutanix, for continuing to support the community, for being a founding partner in supporting Amplify. Um, as this goes out, make sure that for those of you who are not subscribed, you can subscribe to this wherever you listen to your podcast. There's the YouTube channel as well that we have for the video portion. Make sure if you're not a part of the website and the community, go sign up there, which gives you all the information to get into the Slack as well for that real-time community support type that Kevin mentioned. So thank you to our sponsors for their continued support, our founding partners, Tenzig, Goliath Technologies, iGel, Liquidware, Omnissa, Nerdio, and Nutanix. Our channel founding sponsor, Choice Solutions, and our core sponsors this year, Google and Parallel. So thank you to everyone for your continuous support of the community. Thank you again, Kevin, for your time today, and thank you, Nutanix, as well.
Yay. Thank y'all.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Frontline Chatter podcast, and we will talk to you next time.